Hello, my name is Kevin Millette, and I am a licensed practical nurse at the Riverside location of the Community Health Center. I have a quick little presentation on a little project I've been working on that's basically trying to increase access to language interpretation services at the Community Health Center. Just a quick overview of the agenda for this presentation. So first I'm going to define a need for better language interpretation services at the Community Health Center. And then I'll go over a little overview of the project, what the project consists of, what the budget looks like, and then I'll open it up for questions. So first, regarding the need, according to a recent poll from the Migration Policy Institute, 5.8% of Vermonters speak a language other than English. That's huge. That's like 30,000 Vermonters. And then furthermore, 18% of Vermonters report speaking English less than very well. That can lead to all sorts of issues, and as we see here, I did a little survey of limited English proficient speakers who are patients at CHC, and if you take a look at this survey results, you can see that we're not doing a very good job of providing care to our limited English proficiency speakers. So what does that lead to? Why is this bad? Some things that this leads to is the use of ad hoc interpreters, which are interpreters that aren't formally trained. They're usually a family member, a friend, or just another staff member in the clinic. Another thing this can lead to is medical errors, and finally, it leads to higher costs for the facility. So focusing on ad hoc interpreters, there's a lot of reasons why using these kinds of interpreters are really bad for our patients. Untrained interpreters are more likely to make errors, violate confidentiality, and it increases the likelihood of poor health outcomes for our patients. Ad hoc interpreters usually have a lack of unfamiliarity with medical terminology. They may be embarrassed, say it's like a patient's son or daughter, they may be embarrassed about intimate or sexual issues regarding their parents, and they may not be honest about that. And then also they may speak for the patient, which we don't want. The patient is the best source of information for healthcare providers, so we want their story. We want them to tell us what's happening to them, not their friends or family members' interpretation of what's happening to them. And then moving on to medical errors. Poor translation services leads to many medical errors, including misdiagnosis, medication errors, issues surrounding informed consent. Are you really truly informed if you don't understand what's happening, if you weren't explained about a procedure or something you're agreeing to in the language that you understand? So there's all sorts of types of communication errors that can occur when not utilizing the proper language translation services, and these include omissions, answering for the patient, or substitutions. According to research conducted by Anna Naples from the University of California in San Francisco, an average patient encounter, any encounter with a healthcare provider using an ad hoc interpreter, there are 27 communication errors on average. 27, that's huge. And while those errors aren't always clinically significant, when they are, it's a big problem. Like I said earlier, it can lead to patients taking the wrong medications, or not accurately telling the provider their symptoms, or any sort of misunderstandings. So how does this lead to increased facility costs? This leads to increased facility costs in a few ways. Language interpretation services is a protected right by patients. And here at the Community Health Center, we rely on a lot of funding from federal and state grants. And if we're not compliant, we can lose some of that funding. So it's important for us to, provide quality language interpretation services so that we stay compliant with some of these federal grants and we don't lose that funding. And then if we're found liable, if harm comes to a patient and there's poor patient outcomes, that can be malpractice, and then possibly the patient could sue us, and that could cost us all sorts of money and legal fees and all that jazz. And then it can also be harmful to our organizational brand. Our patients trust us. They come to the Community Health Center expecting good quality care, and that's part of our brand. If we lose that branding, then patients no longer trust us, and they'll no longer seek us out as a quality primary care provider. So what is this project? Currently, the Community Health Center relies on a system of audio interpreters, so language interpreters over the phone, which is fantastic. It works great. However, I feel like it's missing a lot of patients. So like medically complex patients, patients who are hard of hearing, patients who, for any sort of reason, that wouldn't be their first choice of language interpretation. And that's okay, but that's where CHC needs to come in and provide better options for those patients. So with this project, I aim to implement a better language interpreting service, educate staff, and gain valuable patient feedback. So like I said, one of the things I'll do is create an in-service for employees who work face-to-face with patients to teach them why language interpretation is so crucial, and then how to best utilize language interpretation services. And also I want to make it easy and accessible, because if it's not easy and accessible, then nobody will use it. So there's 3 ways essentially for language interpretation. There's in-person, face-to-face translators. There's video translators who you could access on a portable tablet like this iPad. And then, like I mentioned previously, there's on-the-phone interpreters who can communicate with patients over the phone. I would seek to purchase and install portable tablets that makes it super easy. You just have to pick it up and press a button, and then you have your interpreter of choice on the screen and ready to communicate with our patients. How would this solve the problem of poor language interpretation? In a couple of ways. Better access means higher utilization, and if we educate our staff members and tell them why this is so important, that will create buy-in, and then they'll be champions of better language interpretation. This is just a kind of overall budget of the project that I've come up with. Things may vary, but as you can see, the biggest expense is going to be vendor costs. Language interpretation vendors are very expensive, and that's where most of the money is going to come from. But if you remember, as I pointed out earlier in the presentation, it's potentially going to save us tons of money in the future. So it's really a necessary cost. And then in conclusion, good language interpretation software and services means better patient care. Better patient care is good for patients and it's good for the community health